Okay, so this is part 4 of the Pavilion orthographic drawing tutorials. As I mentioned last time, I was going to add some detail to this plan. And so here it is at kind of one full scale, which probably only makes sense for my computer screen. But anyway, you get a sense of kind of how line weights are reading and how detail is reading. Especially when you zoom to 1:1, some things will show up a lot differently at the right scale. But anyway, so this is kind of the level of detail. One thing I did want to mention, if you are, doing a design that has like a roof, I'm sorry, floor decking or like a raised floor of some kind, or an elevated floor, another thing you may want to consider doing is including like handrails, which, again, is something that could be designed, can be simple. So I might use, for example, if I'm thinking I need a handrail right here, I'm doing getting pretty good quality. I'm going for my superlight. I'm already on that. Getting pretty good quality, at this scale, kind of just using double line. And it seems true. You'll notice that that's how I adjusted the road to show the dashes, to show the kind of white painted stripe around the edges. Off my outlines as well. So that's one way to go with it. Of course, you can also draw like the posts if you want, if that's part of what we would see if you were drawing. And then we'll get a sense of whether or not there's kind of like a barrier or a boundary there, right? Anyway, so the dash line I think is a good way to go. I'm sorry, the double line. If you want to show things like handrails. Okay, so what I'm going to do in this tutorial is kind of continue with where we were, and I'm going to draw my sections now. Okay, so going back to my my workspace, I'm going to delete this because I don't want it. So remember we talked about last time having like a line that is our section cut line, pulling off our topographic lines from there. Now, I should mention I actually adjusted my topography for where my path goes. I'll turn off my hatches again there. And I'm going to turn on my lines. Yeah, still, all right. So that's how we kind of interpolated our topography. I'm going to go ahead and just get rid of these construction lines from drawing the topography, since we already have that layer kind of set. The other thing I'm going to do is go back to my working C-plane, use the command set view, set it to the C-plane, and set it to top. That orients me my C-plane, which allows me to draw kind of the right orientation relative to my section. So once I have my viewport all set up, I'm going to go ahead and start drawing construction lines to indicate my pavilion. So I have to reference back real quick where I put my pavilion. So I kind of put the floor like near the, oh, also by the way, this might be useful to show railings in this one. Not sure, you'd have to see if it looked good at that scale, but it'd be a useful thing to do. Anyway, so I kind of put my pavilion in highest point. So I'm going to kind of follow that. Let's say it's that contour right there. That contour right there is that point in the landscape right there. But that's the kind of level of the floor of my decking. And I'm also drawing where this cutout is, where the trees come through. Obviously, that's kind of an important thing to show. So that's our floor, basically. That's where we would see our kind of decking. Again, I'm going to make a new layout. New layout. 22 by 22. And I'm going to, again, I'm going to go into this layout, make sure I have my construction plane set as current. Use the command set view. Go to C plane. Go to top. So that allows me to orient myself to my section. I'm also going to set my scale. Again, we actually want these boundaries to go all the way to the edge. There we go. Of course, with our section, we want to drop it vertically a little bit. But anyway, that'll give me an idea of what my drawing is looking like at the right scale. Okay, so obviously this is my flooring. I'm going to split, or my floor level, I should say. Split it here and here. So there we would be looking at it beyond. There's a couple things we could do. We could indicate, first we want to indicate kind of the thickness of the floor. I'll offset it to a few inches. Let's make sure we do it. Using the option to cap flat, so it makes an outline. And that's going to go on my heavier line weight. There we go. We could also indicate here, I don't know if this is something that you're being asked to do necessarily included in the kind of like structural diagram, but you could also like include some framing or some beams and stuff under the decking to show like where that goes. I'm going to throw this on a lighter line weight. That should more like recede. There we go. So we're making some hierarchy there already. Between the floor we're cutting through and the floor we're not. Before I go ahead and draw any decking though, I'm sorry, any like structure under the floor, I'm also going to draw this structure, which will give me a sense of where my beams are, where my structural grid is happening, and that could line up with the structure below, right? So in order to do that, I'm also going to go back over here where I made my little cheat sheet. I'm going to remember. Okay, so my verticals are 8 feet, and then my roof planes go up at 30 degrees. So let's see here. Let me just draw that kind of horizontally. Draw 8 feet. And what depth is this roof? Actually, what depth is it between the section cut line and the back of the wall? I'm looking down here where I see the dimensions of my cursor. So I'm at 10.95. We'll call that 11. Okay. And we'll take that to 30 degrees. So that should be a good indication of where my wall goes up. The wall back there. And that's the top of the roof. And that's actually where I'm cutting through, right? So that's where I would want to indicate the thickness of my roof. That's also where I would want to indicate some of my structural beams and stuff like that. Am I on the right layer? Construction lines is what I should be on. Great. I'm going to go, actually, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to Okay, let's borrow this dimension, 0.7. All right, and again, that's where we would be cutting through that kind of structure that we're seeing. And so that's a line that comes all the way down to the ground. We copy these and lengthen them. So we would see that extend kind of to the fold in the back of the roof. We'd also see that extend down to the ground. Right? That's going to go on my lighter line weight. Do that. Go on my medium. Or even on my light, we'll see. And on my medium, I'm also going to do the silhouette of the building. So yeah, let's put this on my lighter line weight. Side for now. And those lines. And let's split it. Get rid of those lines. Wherever you want to draw those, that should be a lighter line weight as well, because it's just a crease that we're seeing in that roof plane. Put that on. Yeah, I'll put that on that layer. Okay. Cool. So there again, we could then start to indicate maybe where we would see structure happening up below the floor. So here we would also want to indicate how our pavilion meets the ground, right? That's where our path kind of meets with the pavilion. So that we could start to kind of adjust our topography a little bit. Maybe there's a little edge or a retaining wall or something. Holds that. Okay. This section would also actually indicate where my path is, and I want to go ahead and show that too. Construction lines in here. That line. So where we see that, and again, we wouldn't have a necessarily super structured path. We're just going to level it out, right? Because anywhere where we cut through a path, we'd see kind of a level area. Actually looks pretty good right there. Okay. Our topo. Great. There's a path up above. And we'd see a little bit of path there. Already kind of indicated. That could have a little bit of an edge too. Okay. Now the other thing that we wanted to kind of talk about here is the difference, what we see in the ground plane between just the kind of surface of the ground and its like shape, basically. So let's see here. Do we have a line that goes? These. Okay. And so what I would kind of want to indicate in between these areas where my paths are is some difference in the nature of the ground. So if we refer to our, again, the example project that we're basing this on, we're seeing that there's some kind of variation in that surface, that ground surface that we're reading. So I could offset this line. I'm going to turn off the cap and add a little bit of variation. Or I'm sorry, what I should actually do is just rebuild this curve. And I can rebuild it with however many points I want. I want to keep the degree set to, sorry, I want to set the degree to 3, keep it at 3. Okay, and then we can just kind of mess around with our points a little bit. Variation. Okay, I'm going to clean up my section cut lines there. Oops. Right. Cool. There we'd see, yeah, so down here we might also see some variation. Then cool. Okay, so the other thing we would want to show in this one, again, we could show that railing if we need to. I think in this case, the height of that deck off the ground wouldn't require a railing. But the other thing that we'd want to indicate, so let me draw, first of all, the structure behind here. Remember, we see that as well. Construction lines. And it has a height of, it's a depth of 20 feet. Copy these down right now. So just scale 1D part to 20 feet. Right. That's how high that guy's going to go. All right. Right. I'm just going to copy this using the orient command. Again, because we're not actually cutting through the roof, we're just looking at the edge of that roof. I'm going to throw this onto a lighter line weight. I guess we would also actually be looking at the wall kind of beyond, or I'm sorry, the floor beyond here. I want to make sure we indicate that. Fine. Delete that. Okay. Remember this lighter as well. Oops. I'll make those guys even lighter. Okay. Just copy these in. Oh, here, it should be. Oh, I guess this end's a little bit cut. That's okay. All right, so we would see that. We'd also see the pavilion behind this one. And then we'd see the tree. So I'm going to add those things as well to this drawing. I'm also going to add that handrail, remember, from the bicycle path that we would see. About 36 inches, 3 feet. It may actually be taller, in fact. That's that handrail. Again, best to show those kinds of things with a little bit of thickness at this scale. I'm going to do about 2 inches. Circle 2-point, remember, because we're cutting through that thing. Oops. That's going to be our heavier line. I'll change this onto our lighter. Then we'd also see that kind of extending away. I'm going to draw from the center point and then offset those lines. We'd also see the handrail extending away. And actually, if we wanted to map that out somewhat precisely, we could go divide on this curve. Just say we want to do, I don't know, 12. And I could make a construction line for each one of those points, imagining that's an upright on my railing. I actually got it pretty wrong. Okay. Those are my uprights. I'm going to redraw this. Imagine there's a little bit of variation in this. Not to snap to my ortho here. Here we go. Okay, and then I'll do the same thing. Offset this guy. I'm going to measure the radius of my circle. Use the option both sides. And I'll just copy that from this circle to this one. And I'll just copy these. This is kind of the same thing you would do on your own pavilion if you had railings or something like that. Okay, delete those center lines. And if I really wanted to go crazy, I could show how it kind of intersects. Right? Right, each joint would look something like that. This would actually be pulled back slightly. Anyway, I won't make you watch me do all that. But so that's how you would kind of draw that stuff. And I'm going to actually put this in later. Cool. All right, so I'm going to I have my railing there. I should also actually indicate my bike path in the section cut, as kind of a flat area. You could even put a scale figure with a bike on a bike there. The other thing I would definitely want to show in this section is going to be that tree, obviously, like I said, and what I'm going to do right now, which is to show a little bit of structure underneath. Or remember that in this spot anyway, is we're actually cutting through there. Show something like that going on. You wouldn't see it there, right? Because that's actually behind. But we would see it right there. And I'll do the same thing for these guys. If it's a place where I'm cutting through, or I'm sorry, if it's a place where I'm cutting through those kind of floor elements, yes, I want to see that. Place behind, I want to lower that line weight, and don't want to see that. So these would go the lower line weight. Like so. And we could also indicate, maybe a couple areas where that structure actually comes down to the ground. And again, this will all be stuff that you should have developed kind of through physical modeling. So what you really want to do is just represent whatever's going on with your physical model. I'm just kind of making this stuff up so you can see what it'll look like. There you go. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and kind of wrap up with this drawing. Obviously, we need to show two sections. We need to show one looking in each direction. We need to make sure we indicate where we're cutting through, and we need to label our drawing. So the other thing I'm going to do real quick is just talk about that. Of course, we have a couple different options. We can label our drawings on the sheet. You're welcome to do that if you'd like to. And so, like I've indicated, like we did in our shop drawing assignment, points. Okay, like we did in our shop drawing assignment, we can just use the command text and write plan 1/8 of an inch equals 1 foot. We definitely want to indicate that. We also definitely want to indicate north, right? So we could, if we wanted to, we could orient this this whole plan, shift it a little bit. What I mean by that is, we could go set view, plane top. Do that. By the way, you can use the home button. I gotta go back in your in your like views. But if I go to name C-plane, I'm going to set my C-plane first. Set my view to my C-plane. Awesome. And go back to the main plan is make sure I reset my scale every time I zoom in or out in that detail window. It's going to change my scale. Anyway, and so what we'd want to do is we'd want to draw a north arrow. If we choose to show our plan like this, we want to draw our north arrow. I'm just using that line because I know it's correct. We want to draw our north arrow, obviously way too big, oriented to the right direction, right? Our plan is oriented more to our design or to our pavilion. This should be small and unobtrusive. And of course, if you're doing this, you probably want to, if you're doing this for your InDesign file, you probably want to just label it separately in the InDesign file. I'll let you handle that. And then finally, we'd also indicate, so by the way, here's something that might come in handy. These detail views, whenever you select a detail window, so like when I go inside this window and I'm on the plan, you'll see that a new set of layers shows up. Or sorry, a new set of options in my layers panel shows up. And what that indicates is I can set individual properties to my layers just for this detail view. So if I want to adjust anything very slightly for this particular drawing, I can do that in my layers panel, which is a really useful thing for making kind of final adjustments. But what I was going to do is I was going to go in here and just turn off my construction lines. So I can turn off the visibility of my construction lines just in the viewport. And that enables me to show that. That enables me to have it on in my workspace, but have it off in my drawing. So anyway, oh yeah, the last thing I wanted to show here is how to indicate where I cut my section. That's important as well. Of course, I just turned the layer off for. There we go. So there's my section cut line, that construction line. I think one of the easier ways, less obtrusive ways to draw a section cut indication is to draw a couple little L's. Now I could also, if I'm being really careful, I could indicate where the start and end of my section are relative to that drawing. And I'd want my construction lines off. Don't need those lines. I might even bump that up to a heavier line weight. And then I would want to basically write, add some text in here and indicate that that section cut line corresponds to a particular drawing. So I can call it whichever section. I don't want to indicate my scale on that label. I do want this to be a kind of a lighter line. So I can call this, sorry, that's confusing. I can call this section A if I want to. I can also label, I can just write A next to each of my tags. I'm going to scale this down quite a bit. Again, I want to orient it to that tag. There we go. So that's a good way to indicate my section. And then when I go to actually, draw my section, I would just copy this. Say that's section. Like so. Okay, so that's going to conclude this sequence of tutorials, and hopefully we covered everything, all the kind of skills you'll need. Yeah, we'll be available during labs to help you guys with these assignments, and we'll be eager to see your progress. End it there.